to order at this time. And the call to order, Ms. Slomsky.
Mr. Bale,
Here.
Mr. Horton, Mr. Horton, you can give me a thumbs up there. Perfect. Mr. Horton is here. Mrs. Showerman? Mr. Shank?
Here.
Mr. Scatella? Mr. Scatella? Mr. Scatella, can you give me a thumbs up that you hear me? Mr. Scatella, can you give me a thumbs up that you hear me? All right, we'll come back to Mr. Scatella. Mr. Winarski
Here.
and Chairwoman Rennie.
Here.
Mr. Scatella, can you hear me?
Almost looks like he went off.
Mr. Scatella,
Oh, there he is.
we're just gonna hold one moment to confirm Mr. Scatella can hear us. Hold on one moment, please. Bear with us just a moment.
so.
Deputy Clerk Moore is on.
Down in
with
the
Mr.
left-hand
Scatella.
corner,
I hear Terry now.
that's me.
Okay,
Terry,
he's good.
Where's that at?
Volume up on your computer, maybe it's on your computer.
I don't see where the volume is. You still there? Now I just lost you.
Okay, I think we can hear him now.
yeah, we
Mr.
can,
Scatella, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Mr. Scatella,
No, we can hear you, but you can't hear us.
Correct.
Julie's asking if you're there.
Yeah, I can't hear you and I just lost my,
Okay. Can you log in from your cell phone so you can hear us?
oh God, now you're testing me real good, aren't you? All right, let me see here.
All right, so get on your cell phone. And I'll hang up with you.
Wait a minute. Now I'm on, you want me to stay on my personal cell phone?
On your work phone.
Not if it's a flip phone.
Okay.
or
All
a
right,
bag phone.
let me see here. Launch
all right,
meeting.
we're almost there with Councilman Scatella.
Didn't they say you can't teach an old
Hold on a
Marine?
moment.
Well, they actually have the new flip phone, I believe.
Yeah, they do. Joked about getting my dad one.
Yeah, let's do that. That's fine.
All right, Terry, I'm gonna give you to Julie on my phone so she can hear your answers, okay? All right. Here we go.
All right, you ready, Councilman Scatella? We're doing the roll call. Councilman Scatella, are you present?
Yes.
Okay,
Hey,
Madam Chairwoman, the floor is yours.
All right. We can move on to the hearing of the public, and we'll get into the action for consideration and so forth after that. Is there anyone from the public wishing to be heard today?
Well, I had my hand raised. This is Freda Tepfer. I want to thank you all for all the hard work you're doing. And I want to say that even as a very well-informed member of the public, I sit here today knowing that I looked at my mail-in ballot envelope over and over to make sure I did everything right. And yet still I'm worried about whether I did it. And there was a period of time when the instruction was that undated ballots would be counted. And people did vote during that time. And not all of the instructional videos and other things that came out actually mentioned dating the ballot. Some of them talked about signing, some of them talked about dating, some of them didn't. I do urge you, since the dating of the ballot is really not significant to the counting in any way other than it could invalidate somebody's vote, that you approve a process for curing the ballots. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to be heard?
Yeah, this is Cliff Smathers and from Northeast. And I would like to counter that statement in a way, because I feel that from what I heard on Thursday, Erie County has decided to do those dates and massage those dates, even though there's no protection for them to do so. I think that there's laws out there for a reason. And I think whenever we kind of wink and blink around those laws and try to figure out people's intents, it moves the line that is drawn in the sand as to what is okay and what is not. And I don't know at what point that line gets to be drawn. So is a good date whenever it's not there? Is it whenever it's wrong? It's easier to just say it is the date or it is not the date. It puts you in a position where you have black and white lines. And I would like you to provide, to follow that rule. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to be heard?
I wish I could say something real quick. I think the biggest thing on this that I found is that obviously there's been pre-canvassing of these ballots without any watchers there. And according to the law, any pre-canvassing of ballots has to have watchers from both parties there. And so obviously these ballots have been sorted and pre-canvassed and nobody's there to watch. Now you may have video, but that doesn't supersede.
Sir, excuse me. Normally we get the public to speak. I have to correct what you're saying. There has been no pre-canvassing, and I take issue with that.
How did you sort the ballots then?
Canvassing is the opening of ballots. We have not done any sort of pre-canvassing whatsoever. So I do have issue with that statement. It is clearly false, and you know, that is just wrong.
I'll correct myself then. Sorry.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to be heard?
Art Leopold.
Yeah, this is Art. I wasn't going to say anything, but I am for curing ballots. The intent of voters, the vote is what's important. A date, not so much. So please do proceed to put in place some process of curing, even if you necessarily need to put those ballots aside so that they can be looked at later. Those things are important because although the Supreme Court of PA has ruled, there may be subsequent rulings as the days move on. I do appreciate your efforts. Thank you for your time today.
Anyone else from the public who wishes to be heard? And Sir Tom, the one I cut off, you know, I have to apologize for cutting you off because I think you were in the middle of making a point. I felt that I had to correct the one statement, but if you had additional that you wanted to state, I can open the floor to you again.
I appreciate that. I just think that I was at a meeting last week with this board and it seemed to be very clearly stated that these, I think there were 200 and some, I'm not sure, of these undated or incorrectly dated ballots that were being set aside. And according to, from what I gather, the Supreme Court and both Supreme Courts, is these were to be set aside. And if they have to be dealt with later, they can obviously be dealt with. But the law states a certain thing, and that is that they have to be dated correctly and dated. And for us to make a resolution now all of a sudden to say, well, we can alter that law on our own as a county, I think is really stretching our authority and what we should be allowed to do. That's it. I just think we should follow the law. I mean, we don't know who these individuals are, so we can't say that we're trying to favor one group or another. We have no idea who these people are. Follow the law, and then after everything's cleared up, everything can be done correctly. But just to jump in and make changes doesn't sit well with me. I know that. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public who wishes to be heard? Second call. Anyone else from the public wishing to be heard? And finally,
Madam Chair, if I may,
thank you. Go ahead.
I would just like to clarify that the guidance provided by the Department of State after the Supreme Court's decision last week was to allow counties to make the decision to cure the ballots, which allows the voter to correct the error, not the county to correct the error on behalf of the voter. So this is just an opportunity for the County Board of Election to outreach to those voters who may have had a technical but inconsequential error on their ballot envelope. And as Mr. Eddy said, we don't know exactly who these people were from party to party. And so I strongly encourage you to allow the curing of these ballots in an attempt to reach out to these voters so that every vote is counted. The bottom line is that every vote submitted between September 27th and 8 p.m. on November 8th is a valid ballot, regardless of a technical error on the date line on the exterior envelope of those submitted ballots. And those voters deserve an opportunity for their voice to be heard. And I strongly, again, encourage the election board to go through with the curing of these ballots as they have with all of the other mail ballots received.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to be heard?
Other laying off a lot of workers. What about the airline industry? So hard hit during the pandemic.
Seeing none, we can move on. And before we go on to the action for consideration, I just want to state for the record that, the hearing of the public is that we don't have to agree with you and you don't have to agree with us, but it's your chance to be heard, and that is correct. Normally, we don't jump in with statements. This time I felt it was necessary because of protecting the integrity of what we do here at the Office of Elections. We do follow the law. So thank you. And if we could move on to action for consideration by the board.
Hello.
I'm sorry.
Hello.
We have one more person wishing to be heard.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry I missed the beginning of the meeting because I had connectivity problems, but I was one of the voters that did not put a date on the outside envelope. I signed the envelope, but did not put the date on the outside of the envelope. And I want to be able to correct that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to be heard? I feel the need to say that one more time. All right, seeing and hearing none, we will move on to action for consideration by the board. We worked on this resolution, well, before the weekend, but made some changes over the weekend. And Ms. Slonsky, do you want to address any of this before I get into it?
Sure, happy to do that, or do we want our solicitor to first weigh in, whichever you prefer?
Well, either way, I think we need an explanation.
Okay.
We do have a procedure for curing ballots. And because of the Supreme Court ruling, that kind of threw us into a little bit of a gray area, I guess. So, Mr. Talarico, would you like to weigh in on this?
Sure. Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
First off, let's begin historically. Curing ballots has been done years and years and years, way before there was a thing called mail-in voting. And that was done with absentee ballots, people who couldn't show up on the day of the vote because they were either ill or they were going to be out of town. Those people would mail their ballot in. And just as it happens now, those people made mistakes that were immaterial to their desire and intent to vote for somebody. The election board, at least in Erie County, always went out, made a phone call, tried to help those people, advising them that they have a defective ballot and that had to be corrected. So this curing process, I think, because it's become popular right now and something that most of us have just learned about with the advent of mail-in voting, a lot of us have been critical for good reason about the procedure called notice to cure. But it has been going on for a long time. And the whole idea is that what's paramount under the election code and the Constitution is that everybody gets the right to vote. Nobody is disenfranchised. So it's not so much that you're not following the law if you're not following the letter of the law. You're following the law if you're accomplishing what the law intended. All of these laws intended to embrace enfranchisement of people so that they could vote. In the event with mail-in voting, if there are certain restrictions that mail-in voters have to follow that you don't have to follow at the poll, the idea is we don't want to disenfranchise or prevent those people, their vote, from not being counted simply because they failed to date or for some other reason that is facially defective on the ballot. So we have a notice to cure system. This has been going on, and mail-in voting has been cured as well in Erie for the last couple of years. What has not happened is that the procedure itself has not been voted on by the board or documented in writing. So what the board did last week is they formalized the curing process by adopting a resolution permitting the election board to contact voters who may have sent in a mail-in vote, just like this gentleman who just called in, but forgot to date it. The idea is, what's more important, that this gentleman be deprived of his right to vote under the Constitution, or we prohibit him from voting, even though he already voted and indicated who he wants to vote for? Should we say, we're sorry, you failed to date it, or you dated it wrong, or you signed the wrong name, etc. Mind you, all of these ballots are being checked out to confirm the identity of the voter, address, and everything else already being done internally by the system, comparing the mail-in ballot with registration rolls, with numbers that are given to the mail-in ballot when the person applies for the application, that is, applies for the mail-in ballot, there are all kinds of checks and balances to ensure that the person whose vote is inside the secure envelope is the person who's voted. So this board already adopted notice to cure procedures. As far as dating and undating, the Supreme Court decision that came out on November 5th was simply to amend its earlier order by defining what an inaccurately dated vote was. And what they came out and said is that we're changing that anybody who dated the wrong date, so long as it was dated after September 19th, you could count it. Now, its general rule still out there is that the election boards are required to segregate all of the dated or undated or inaccurately dated ballots and preserve them to be counted or not counted, depending on the election board themselves. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court of the United States, there is no court in the land, there's no court in Pennsylvania, and there's no court in the United States that has prohibited or outlawed the notice to cure procedure that has been adopted by the Board of Elections. The only thing going on today is that the Board of Election is adopting the most recent Supreme Court decision with respect to the treatment of undated and irregularly dated or incorrectly dated ballots. So it really doesn't affect the Board of Elections that much anyway, because the Board of Elections has been segregating defective ballots, whether they're dated, whether they're undated or inaccurately dated, whether they contain a signature or not a signature, or any other defect. The election board has always segregated those and preserved them and counted them later on. And that's what they intend to do in this particular case. So the only thing before the board at this time is whether to include as another item in the notice to cure process, undated and inaccurately dated ballots. Once again, there is no law that prohibits the notice to cure procedure. There is a case pending in Commonwealth Court where the litigants are arguing whether the law does prohibit that. That case has not been decided. It will more than likely be decided within the next week or month, sometime at that time, maybe even down the road. But my guess is that that court will do the same thing and say that the election board or that the election code does not prohibit notice to cure procedures. And it's best that the legislature take it up and rule on that issue itself. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tallarico. I appreciated the historical perspective. It's just so everyone understands how we came to this and the fact that this is completely consistent with how the Board of Elections has operated for many years. Ms. Slomski, is there anything you wish to add to this?
I do, and I want to just again reconfirm that this, the supplemental order from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court after our meeting on Thursday, and again, all ballots that are dated outside of the range of September 19th through November 8th for mail-in, and August 30th and November 8th for absentee are considered incorrectly dated. So what we have here in Erie County, the total of 352 ballots that are undated or incorrectly dated. We have 168 undated ballots, 184 incorrectly dated ballots. And the concern I have for the board is out of those 184 that are incorrectly dated, there's 124 that are dated maybe just slightly off. It's not on the line, but they're dated like they signed and dated right in the box, or they dated right next to the box, the signature box that is. And then that's 124 of those. There's 11 that are partially dated, started to write the date, 10/22. And I'd like for folks to have that opportunity to come in and fix those. But for those 124 that are simply just dated, right next to the line or under the line, I would, ask the board to allow us to begin filing those right now. But all issues, all those 352 undated or incorrectly dated have been, segregated and preserved until we take action. And I do want to thank the parties and everyone out there for their efforts. We right now have 2 people waiting in our lobby, and we fielded, I think, about 25 phone calls so far from folks this morning. And just like the gentleman that spoke as well, when we were coding in these ballots, we were getting that, we had to get a basically called a rejection error. It says, cancellation, no signature. So folks were receiving those errors, and that's why they are already reaching out to us. So I'm happy to answer any questions the board might have, but as we know, as we discussed in Saturday's evening's email, it's still that same breakdown. The team has reviewed the ballots throughout the weekend just to make sure we have those, again, 352 total, 168 undated, 184 incorrectly dated. And again, in addition to this resolution, I'd like permission for those 124 that are dated in the wrong line to be able to, file those in their appropriate precinct.
Yeah, that would just be a matter of adjudication, I think, rather than curing.
And Madam Chairwoman, those ballots, for example, that'll save us time on election day when the board does meet, and when we start reviewing ballots that are going through that pre-canvassing process that, may have an error on them. And as we have learned in the primary, as I learned, usually the board will decide that it came down to the intent of the voter or what have you. So I'm just simply asking to allow us to file those 124 today to save us time on election day and go through that process as well.
All right,
Madam
thank you.
Chair.
Mr. Talarico?
Yeah, those aren't inaccurately dated ballots. Those can be adjudicated. An inaccurately dated ballot would be one that you cannot decipher, or one that has been dated before September 19th. Those are the only inaccurately dated ballots.
Right. Yeah, I think that's just a matter for adjudication as well. And that would take, having the council or board members put their heads together and give a thumbs up or thumbs down to it. But I agree that if the date's in there, what's the difference if it's a half an inch off the line? So if the date is accurate and so forth. But at this time, I would like to open the floor to questions and comments by the board.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Scatella, we can hear you.
Okay, I finally figured this out. It took me a while. So with this resolution, we're saying there's no intent that the voter is trying to pull something fast here. So with this resolution, we're going to let them vote or accept their vote. And if it goes through the courts, let them rule. Is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't say that exactly. We're giving them the opportunity to make a correction to the outside of the envelope of their ballot to correct missing information or wrong information. So whether it gets counted, that's not up to us. That's, again, that's giving them the opportunity to have their vote counted.
Okay, and can I ask Ms. Slonsky a question? Julie?
Yes, sir.
How much extra work does this put on your office?
We're here to serve the voters, Councilman Scatella. It does put some extra work on. It does put us in a crunch, but we're here, to serve the voters. But, as we are less than 24 hours from election day, this does put us in a predicament, yes. But again, we're here, and that's why I want to be able to release this list out to, the media, out to the public, on our website, so that the community can help us track these folks down.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I see Councilman Bale with his hand up.
Thank you. So I think that anybody that knows me and knows the careers that I've had knows that I'm a rule, direction, law follower. Well, I wasn't always that way. And, I learned a valuable lesson at a much younger age. I took a class on leadership through a military affiliated college. And partway through the class, we were given a test on, what we had learned up to that point. Well, at that point, being much less of a rule or direction follower, I like to be first as opposed to last, and flew right into the test. I read the first question, super easy, started to breeze through it. And after I got done, I went back to put my name on the test. And at the top, when I read through all the directions, it said, please read the directions very carefully, front and back, blah, blah, blah. Well, on the back, it said, if you've made no marks on this paper, return it to the instructor, or he'll put your name on it at the instructor's desk to receive full credit. Anybody that had placed a mark, had done anything except take the paper up to the instructor, was given an F in the class. That didn't impact my overall grade, but it taught me a valuable lesson. The military in itself taught me attention to detail, and it's something that I've tried to pass on to my children and others that I've been around. And my fear is that we continue to take away personal accountability, responsibility from people and replace that with some type of government direction, oversight, regulations. And, at some point, I understand people make mistakes. Everybody does, and you have to learn from those mistakes. But I think that we've taken away that personal accountability and responsibility, and for that reason, for me, I will not be supporting the resolution in front of us today. Thank you.
Anyone else from the board who wishes to be heard or has a question?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'd like to be heard. Real short and sweet. I just think that we should always look to ensure that every valid registered voter can exercise their franchise, can exercise their constitutional right to vote. This is kind of like a staple of our democracy. And it's tantamount to being an American citizen. And so we are in full accordance with the law. And I wholeheartedly support. The only thing that we're really voting on here today has already been out explained by our solicitor. So really it's kind of like a no-brainer for me. So thank you. Let's please don't let Erie County Board of Elections stand in the way of anyone's exercising their franchise. Thank you.
Yes, and Mr. Shank, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. In any way, shape, or form are we trying to deny anybody the right to vote? As a veteran, I took an oath of the Constitution, and I take that oath very seriously. When you go to a polling place and you go to vote in person, you have to sign and you have to date that form for the privilege of voting. And this is no different than doing that. If you can't follow a simple instruction of signing and dating basically a legal document, I find it a stretch of the law and order that everybody likes to talk about when the rules are very clear. You sign it, you date it, your privilege of voting has been utilized. If you can't follow those simple rules, I'm sorry, we have to have rules to have a driver's license. We have to have rules to own a home. We have rules to have a job. And you sign and you date those documents to say, yes, this is me, and yes, I can follow the rules. And if we can't follow simple rules, we're in a lot of trouble. And I won't be supporting this because it's a very simple task. We have asked Joe Q. Citizen to actually just sign the document saying, yep, this is my vote, and this is the day I did it. So for time purposes, I'll yield back and thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the board who wish to be heard? Or who
Madam
have,
Chair,
Mr. Scatella?
yes, I respect what my colleagues have stated, all of them. But I would assume that a lot of these, and I shouldn't assume, but people of age like me who had trouble getting into Zoom, because they make a mistake on the date, we're going to deny them that privilege to vote. And I will support this resolution to give them that opportunity. Just because accidents happen, it's not that, how do you train somebody, and I'll use my age, 74, that's sitting at home by themselves, filling out their ballot and putting it in one envelope and sealing it and signing the other envelope and with the dates. I just think we do everything to give them the right to vote, no matter whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, or whoever. We should give them their constitutional right to vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else from the board who wishes to?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Winarski.
Good morning, all. Question. So as of right now, of all these ballots that came back with the wrong date, none of those people have been called or anything to let them know that we can't do that yet?
It went out on Friday after we got the notification about the Supreme Court ruling. And the only reason it went out Friday is that before that, we were instructed to include those ballots with the rest to be counted. So the order puts us in a situation where none of them would be counted and they would not be given the opportunity to correct those ballots. And as we know, the time is ticking. They have a very small window of opportunity to be able to correct their ballots, just like any other voter has the opportunity to correct a defect or an error on their ballot prior to the canvassing and pre-canvassing. So I guess I just want to say that the precedent is clearly that we help people to vote. And just by the number of calls and the number of people who come in every single day to voter registration to receive assistance on voting, assistance is needed by a great many people. It would be nice to say that, yeah, everyone should stand on their own 2 feet and know exactly what to do at all times. We're not here to pass judgment on whether someone is fit to vote. We're not here to pass judgment on whether they should be voting or whether they should have done something. That's up to the courts. All we do is give people the vehicle to issue their votes. And the procedure to cure is something that we have done and the courts have been silent on. And it's been done statewide, in fact, for many, many years. So there is nothing out of the ordinary. And the procedure to cure is not a sanctioning dating or not dating or following directions or not following directions. It's simply giving people the chance to exercise their right to vote. As far as whether it's eventually counted, I'm sure that will come down to the courts at some point, but that's not our job today. Our job is simply to, do we give them the same right to make simple corrections or do we not? And you know, my take on it is that this is exactly like what we have done all the way along, every step of the way. And I think it's consistent with the policies and procedures that we've done. Again, it's not sanctioning, it's not saying, you know, that they should have, or that it's not excusing anything, but what it's doing our job in allowing people or providing them with the ability to cast their vote. And if something needs to be decided down the line, either by the state legislature or the courts themselves, then that's in their side.
Madam Chair, if I could interrupt you, unfortunately, Councilman Schenk, he has to unfortunately leave the call. So he's wondering if we can move for the vote. But before we do so, I want to clarify Councilman Winarski's question. Councilman, what exactly is going on, as I was mentioning? These are coded, like Mr. Waples, who had said he received notification. We have to scan them into the system, like when we're retrieving, or we're scanning in the ballot as we're receiving it, and we scan them in as canceled, no signature. That's why some folks have reached out. Like the folks we have sitting in the lobby, the folks that are calling, when they got that error, they were notified and they've reached out for concern. So that we advise them they're not allowed to do anything to their ballot until the board votes. But some people, yes, have been notified when they got that code coming through. Thank you.
Ms. Slonsky, so I guess my question will be one more time. Will all these people be contacted then within the next 24 hours? And will they have to come down to the courthouse to get it corrected, or the correct date or signature on it?
They will be contacted, Councilman. Our goal is to call them, but also to post this on our website, to send this out to the media so everyone can be helping in this outreach effort. And they do need to come here in person, and it'll be on the resolution that you have in front of you there, or they can designate an agent, someone that is not a designated agent already, to pick up their ballot. Or there is that third opportunity where they could still vote provisionally. And again, that's all described there in the resolution. But ultimately, the goal is to come to the office and fix it before 4:30 today or tomorrow between 7 and 8 p.m. if the board allows that. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, that sounds good.
All right, I would like to request a motion for resolution number 16 then at this time.
So moved by Schenk.
Thank you. Second by Mr. Scatella. Any discussion? All right, roll call then, Ms. Slonsky.
Mr. Horton.
Yes.
Mr. Scatella.
Yes.
Mr. Schenk.
Oh.
Mr. Schenk?
No.
Okay, hear you there. Mr. Winarski.
Yes.
Mr. Bale.
No.
And Chairwoman Rennie.
Yes. All right, with that action taken, as I said, I believe the other is just adjudication on the dating. The date is correct and it's just an inch off. That's something that can be adjudicated in-house. I don't think that would, and I
So
think the
just
board
to
would have
clarify, Madam Chairman, with the 4 affirmative and the 2 against, we are able to move forward now with publicizing this list, with allowing those individuals there in the lobby to be able to vote. And when you're saying adjudication, are you're allowing us to file those 124 ballots away in their precinct that have the dates in the wrong line, or you say you want to wait on those till Election Day?
Mr. Talarico, are you still present on that one? Is he here? I'm not seeing him.
I don't believe he is.
Okay. I'd be more to me, I think it's a simple matter of adjudication that is very straightforward. But I'm a lot more comfortable when we're there in person to see the ballots. If the date is there, the date is there, the correct date is there, and it's just a matter that it's an inch off the line or something like that. Voter intent and the even following the instructions is so close that I would count it.
Okay, so we'll hold those 124 ballots then for review of the board tomorrow.
I think that would be best.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
But yes, as far as everything else goes, then, you know, it should be advertised and people should have the opportunity to come in and make,
Madam Chair,
yes, Mr. Horton.
a question. So if someone is unable to, how do they designate a person to come in and get there? And how do they go about designating someone to come and amend their ballot?
Ms. Slomsky, would you like to address that? I am familiar with it, but.
Absolutely. Very similar. It's that designated agent form, that same form that folks use when they're obtaining a ballot for a spouse or someone they're a caretaker for. It's that simple designated agent form that a lot of folks have already been using. I was a designated agent when I had to help an individual under the Americans with Disabilities Act that was not able to come in and drop off their ballot, but they wanted that to be, dropped off in person. So I had to complete the form with them. They signed off, I signed off, and became their designated agent. So they would need to qualify under the Americans with Disabilities Act to complete that designated agent form. And we have that on our website as well, and have plenty here in our office.
Okay, question, because I have a specific, apparently someone was notified that they misstated or there was an issue with their date and they had since had surgery. So how can they send someone to pick up a form, or what are they to do?
Absolutely. We could email them the form. They can print it off there and sign it with the individual. I had a call actually just on Saturday, similar situation, said, my spouse is hospitalized. How do we do this? I said, do you have a printer? They said, yes. Email them the form, and the husband is completing the form with the wife, going to come in and obtain, her ballot. Hers was for a signature. That's why we were able to have the conversation. And then he's going to take that back to her, and then of course, then deposit it in our ballot box in front of the courthouse.
Gotcha.
But we can email it to them. They can pull it from our website. We have printed copies right here for that authorized agent form.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Councilman.
See, Ms. Fernandez has her hand up. Like to recognize her.
Hi, thank you. I just have a quick question. So can the voter just put a line through the incorrect date and put the new date, or do they need a whole new envelope?
What
That's a
happened to
good-
initialing beside it and then adding a date or whatever under? When I wrote a check, if I made a mistake, I initialed it and put the correct information in. But who the hell knows?
I just want to make sure we're giving out the correct information here.
And remember again, Tanya, we're going to be holding those 124 with the dates in the wrong areas. And then the 11 that are partially dated, allowing them to fill it out right in there in the center of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say, on the envelope itself, if it's missing the date.
Just be standardize it.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, I do want to just mention, I do my voting in person, and I'm back to doing it in person. I enjoy the experience of going to the polls, but the poll workers are there to assist voters as well. To my knowledge, I don't think we date anything at the polls themselves. We sign, but we also get instructions from the poll workers who are able to talk to us through any issues of making stray marks or anything like that on the ballots. So it's not as though people don't have assistance at every step along the way. They do. And I'm proud of the service we give actually through elections. So just want to make that point. All right, I will call for a motion to adjourn if there is nothing else.
So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
This meeting is hereby adjourned.
Thank you.